Pardon the elbow brace, I have a case of old man. Speaking of old men, make sure you stick around to the end of the video so that we can welcome back one of our favorite old men.
I just said, yes, man, right away, anything.
Yeah, don't you love the old aches and pains that just kind of show up out of nowhere once you pass 40? Anyway, speaking of medicine for my joints, I think we need to make some cherry bounce. Now, if you don't know what cherry bounce is, it's an old drink. I think the most famous recipe is from George Washington or his wife Martha Washington. Basically, it's alcohol, cherries, and some sort of sugar. And if you want, you can throw in some spices. So it's not super complicated. You can do the normal pedestrian thing and go to a liquor store and buy some brandy or some whiskey, whatever you want to use for your main spirit in the recipe. Or, hypothetically, you could make your own brandy, which is what the Liquor Fairy helped me out with last year, because I had a really good wild grape harvest in this area. This year it's been so damn dry, I got about a third of what I got last year. And if you want to see that video, it's right up here. The thing I love about using wild grapes is the muscadine grapes that grow around here have a ton of a very unique flavor. It's peppery. The grapiness of them is like at least double what you would taste in a table grape, in a grocery store grape. The flavor of the wine is really, really good. The flavor of the brandy is like nothing I've ever tried before. I've had several viewers and a couple of Patreons ask me to make some cherry bounce, so I thought there really wasn't anything better than to use this wild grape brandy. The smell of it is just exquisite. This is 42% ABV and it's been aged on toasted French oak. And I got the oak from my buddy Ken over at Barrel Charwood. He sells all kinds of toasted wood. I'm going to put a link for him down in the description if you want to check him out. I don't know if this is going to be enough, but I also have some All Faints whiskey from a previous video. I think these will go well together because the All Faints is not a super grungy, grainy whiskey, and I don't want to overpower the fruitiness, the grapiness of this brandy. We're already going to have a lot of competition in this recipe from all the different flavors going on, and I really do want to highlight this brandy. And speaking of the brandy, I hypothetically could have made this brandy using a piece of equipment from today's sponsor, Vevor. It's entirely possible that you've heard of Vevor because their stills are very popular. One of the first things that attracts people to them is the fact that it's not an expensive piece of equipment. And I like that because it's an easy entry into a very complicated and potentially expensive hobby. So I always recommend start with a still that has everything that you need, but there's no point in spending $600 on a big giant still when you don't even know if you like the hobby yet. You like the idea of it, but the practice of sitting and tending a still for 6 hours can be a little daunting. So that's one of the main reasons why I like the Vevor as an entry-level still. But it's not just an entry-level still because it's a full kit. Because you can make just about anything in it that you want to make. You can make bourbon, brandy, rum, and if you're really determined, you can even make some passable vodka. You just have to run it through the still like 4 or 5 times. Vodka's a different animal. I have a video on that too, if you want to make vodka in a pot still. Right up there. And the fact that the Liquor Fairy was able to make such flavorful brandy in this 8-gallon Vevor still should tell you everything you need to know about what it's capable of doing. I recommend the 8-gallon still because when you're first starting out in this hobby, you're doing most of your ferments in a 5-gallon Home Depot bucket. You don't want to ever fill your still all the way to the top. If you have an 8-gallon still, put 5 gallons in it. That gives you headspace so that you're not going to end up having a boil over. Then this is your slobber box slash thumper, and I'm going to get into that more in a second. So in a traditional thumper, your incoming line from the still, and there's a tube that goes almost all the way down to the bottom. So that's the construction of a normal thumper. This is actually a slobber box. Now the slobber box does not have a down tube in it. You can turn this into a thumper very easily without having to buy anything else. All I did was take some of the supplied silicone hose that it comes with, and there's this little copper piece, this little extra copper piece. Here's all you do. You take your little piece of silicone hose, ever so gently, jam it on those threads. Slide the tube in. There you go. And if this is too loose, like it wants to fall out, just throw a zip tie on there to hold it nice and tight. And then once you get it all buttoned up with your clamps on there, make sure you remember which side the copper tube is on, because that needs to be attached to the steel line that comes directly from your still. So that simple little fix that costs you nothing extra gives you a decent sized thumper. Here's something that you need to know about all worm condensers. If you don't know this, it can really mess up your day. Worm condensers work great as long as the tube that is coming from your outlet doesn't have a dip in it. The water has to be able to get out through gravity. So wherever this is going to end up draining, either in your sink or down into a bucket or something, if you're doing a recirculation, because this whole kit does come with a water pump that you can stick down into a bucket with some ice water and run your water up and down that way. That is easy because you just drop the line down. But if you're running over to a sink and you have any sort of distance to get to, you got to make sure that that line doesn't have any little bellies in it, because if it does, it's going to slow down the water that's coming out of here, and once it slows it down, it's going to start wanting to overfill. My liquor fairies used this thing about 8 times, and every single time, great results. Once you've been using it for a while, you're going to want to run vinegar cleaning runs and then immediately rinse it out with cold water to get all that vinegar out of there, and then let it air dry. So those are my tips on running the Vevor. So if you're interested in the old Vevor 8-gallon pot still, check the link down in the video description down below and also in the top comment. And if you're going to purchase one, make sure you use my coupon code right here so that you can get a nice little discount on anything that you buy on the Vevor site. So thanks, Vevor, for making this brandy possible. Hypothetically. All right, so on to the cherry bounce recipe. It is really very easy. First thing we need is a bunch of pitted cherries. You want to go ahead and take the pits and the stems out of your cherries, and then we're going to throw them in a jar. So let's get that going. So I was able to jam about 1.5 pounds to 2 pounds of cherries in there, and I got it pretty chock full. I want a lot of flavor in there. You can save all your seeds, all your cherry pits, and dry them out. But I only recommend doing that if you want to make your own amaretto recipe up here. Now we just have to add our liquor and our flavorings. And for the flavorings, I'm going to do 1/8 teaspoon of ground nutmeg. If you have fresh nutmeg, even better. Just grate a little bit in there. And 1 cinnamon stick. Here's my warning on spices. They can really quickly overpower whatever you're going to do, because you're going to soak this stuff in alcohol. The alcohol is going to extract the flavor as fast as it can. My advice on the cinnamon is to lay the cinnamon stick on the top. That way you can taste this every day and figure out whether or not you need to pull it out. And it's really just up to your personal taste. I can't tell you how long to leave it in there, but start giving it little baby sips after the first 24 hours just to see where it's at. And some people will tell you to just drop it in there and leave it the whole time. I am not that person, because I've been burned a couple of times. The other thing I'll tell you is probably avoid cloves, or if you do use cloves, tie them up in a little bag of cheesecloth with a string on it, put in 1 whole clove, not ground, take it out after 1 day. I would not recommend going more than 24 hours with cloves, because they can overpower everything where you won't taste anything else, and your beautiful cherry bounce will end up tasting like cough syrup. Trust me on this, it happens. And the other thing you need is some kind of sugar to sweeten this up, because it's not a straight alcoholic drink, it's more of a liqueur. A lot of people use plain sugar, some use brown sugar, some use Demerara sugar. I like honey. Honey's delicious. I would say start with 2 tablespoons and give it a shake, let it sit for 24 hours, and then give it a taste. If you think it needs more, then go more. That's the thing about the sweetener and the spices. You can always add more, but you can't take it out. All right, so let's put this together and then lock it up. All right, well, miracle of miracles, I did not use all of my brandy. I still have enough left in there to save for my distiller's library. Now we're just gonna stick this in a cabinet, this beautiful jewel, and wait. I almost forgot one other thing. Whenever you're doing fruit soaks like this, where you have the whole fruit in there, and you want to keep the color of the liquid, a lot of times it'll kind of start to turn brown over time. You could do a very easy, quick little thing and add a little bit of citric acid, just like you're putting a little sprinkle of salt on something. Not even 1/8 of a teaspoon. I'll go ahead and put a link for this stuff down in the video description. Comes in real handy for stuff like this, because you never know when you're going to make some invert sugar and you need a little citric acid. Or if you need to clean something made out of copper. Before we get to the tasting, I just want to say a massive thank you to all of my Patreons, all of you folks down here especially. Thank you so much. I could not be doing this without you guys. All of your input, all of your ideas means so much to me, and I am absolutely grateful. So thank you very much, and you are definitely keeping my lights on. All right, so it's been 24 hours since I put the cherry bounce together. I think it's time for us to go ahead and have a taste. Now, cherry bounce is one of those things that the longer you let it sit, the better it is. So if you make it now, Christmas time is going to be a perfect time to share it with everybody. But remember what I said about the spices? You really got to start testing them after the first 24 hours. And by opening this one, I can already tell the cinnamon is very strong in here. So I'm going to go ahead and take it out. Yeah, very cinnamony. Ah, that's really good. Look at that. It's a little bit cloudy, but what you can do with this is strain it before you serve it, and that's going to make most of this stuff drop out so you have a nice clear ruby red cherry looking liquid. You can also filter through coffee filters if you want to speed it up a little bit. The aroma has a lot going on. I can smell that the cherry is really strong, really potent. I'm picking up a little bit of the brandy and then the spices. So it's got a fantastic flavor. This is going to be kind of like drinking a little bit of summer in winter. And it's that good after one day. The longer this sits, the more it's going to pull the juice out of the cherries. And so that's going to lower your proof. So my brandy was 42% ABV. My guess is it's going to drop into the 30s, probably the low 30s. So by the time this is sat for months, it's going to be more cordial strength. So I forgot to mention that last night, after about 4 hours of soaking, the cherries had already soaked up some of the alcohol. So I went ahead and topped off with my All Faints whiskey. Honestly, I think that's a really good combination. Mostly brandy, a little bit of whiskey. You know, most of the time when you soak something in alcohol, the alcohol is going to actually strip most of the color out of your fruit. So by the time this is sat until December, these cherries might be white, and that's okay. It's not going to hurt anything. All right, that is it. I hope you guys make some cherry bounce right now so you have this for the holidays. It is fantastic stuff. All right, so if you guys learned anything, do me a favor and hit the like button, because it helps to get my channel a little bit more attention in YouTube's funky algorithm. So I really appreciate all the likes I get, and it makes me feel good right here. So if you haven't already, I highly recommend that you hit the subscribe button down below and the little bell icon right next to it, so that you can get notified when I post the next video. If you guys have your own cherry bounce recipes, I'd love to hear them. Please post them down in the comments section down below. All right, so last but certainly not least, we're gonna welcome back George, our old buddy George. George is planning on coming back to YouTube, so here's some of our conversation about that. We're excited to have you back.
Oh man, you know what? It's just so good to actually just sit down and talk with you again. But it's just so good to see your face again. You know, I'll never forget the trip down. I got to come down there, and you and I and Jesse sit around and swap some lies and
a whole lot of scotch.
Yeah, by golly. Oh wow. That's my next vivid memory was waking up
the next morning.
the next day.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Not wanting a drink, oh, by the way.
So what have you
Okay.
been up to for the last couple of years?
Well, we've been busy. We've been absolutely. I've been swamped with visitors and family that come in, and they come to Texas, and you show them around. So I've seen everything over and over and over again, but it never gets old.
Yeah.
I've played a lot of golf. Yeah. Of a lot of construction projects I've got here going on around the house, and I've ever so slowly I'm inching my way back into starting to produce videos again. And I
And
appreciate all the well wishes, and I know all the questions out there about whatever happened. I mean, I've heard everything from, I unfortunately passed away, or
yeah,
or I was arrested,
right.
or a bunch of different things.
Yeah,
And I
those
saw
those were the
Jesse.
top two. Those were the top two. Like, did he get arrested, and
Yeah,
did he go to meet the
yeah,
maker in the
but
sky?
yeah,
And I'm
and I
like,
know
no, he's
yeah,
fine. He's
yeah.
just
And
taking a break.
Jesse published a wonderful video, and he tried to explain it, and with this, and I appreciate that. God, I miss Jesse too.
Yeah,
But I've stayed relatively busy, but I've really taken a long hiatus.
yeah.
Um, and it's
It,
more
it
of a
it's
soul
I
search.
think yeah, honestly, I think if you're not a YouTuber, you don't understand how much of a grind it can be to
Oh my
constantly,
goodness.
because the 15-minute video that we put out can take a couple of weeks or a couple of months, depending on the amount of research and the amount of prep that you have to do. Yeah,
Oh,
you do that a couple of hundred times because your content, the amount of content on your channel was so vast,
yeah,
and there's so much for people to the catalog. People can just keep going through and through and through and not run out of material.
right.
So if you come back and put out like one video every 4 months,
Oh my
people are
goodness.
still gonna have to catch up.
As a matter of fact, if someone asked me honestly what I thought, I say, yeah, you can bet the bank on it. I'll be back.
Yeah, you damn well
Oh,
better.
yeah. I mean, guys like you make it hard to not do that. One of the things I've noticed though is that, and it's always a consideration, um, with the advancement in social media, the last thing you want to do is become irrelevant.
Right.
Um,
I don't
and
think that's gonna happen.
yeah, I agree, and I appreciate that, but at some point, because it just, I think we've got a community of um, loyal, serious hobbyists, and
Yeah.
between you and me, it's not, oh, how many likes did you get, how many viewers have you got? It's like you said, the love in it is all in sharing information.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And if you share that with just one person, you feel like you've accomplished something.
That's
But
why I started the channel. I just wanted to find a couple of other nerds. Is
yeah, there
there
you
anybody that wants to
go.
nerd out about this stuff too?
Yeah, yeah, and
The fact that we have such a large community of people that are like, I find that fascinating too. Please tell me more.
yeah,
That's amazing.
there is a great population out there that are just
Yeah,
starving for information.
yeah. I love digging into these projects. The weirder the better. And
Yeah,
then the other thing I love just as much is sharing it.
right.
And because I want to be able to go to somebody and say, like, look at this weird fucking thing I just did,
Yeah, yeah.
and
And
you
either it
can't do
worked
that
or
with
it
the
doesn't work.
yeah, and it doesn't matter. But with the
Yeah.
community, everybody in the community is like, oh man, sorry that didn't work, but maybe try this next time and it'll work.
What's really beautiful about it is the sharing of information that you're able to accomplish. Um, and a lot of times it's even the processes are exactly the same for different people, but
Mhm.
somehow they'll wind up with different results. It's an amazing science. I always call it an art, a science, and a process. And
Yeah.
so, hey, so you've been working. I understand. I know emails and stuff. You've been working on a cherry bomb.
Cherry bounce.
How did it turn out?
Scrumptious. It is so delicious. It is so delicious. And this was after one day of sitting on cherries.
Oh
One
wow!
day.
I made a quart of that probably
Hmm.
6 or 7 years ago.
Hmm.
And after a couple of years, my wife found it in the cupboard, it's way in the back, and here's these cherries. And I was like, yeah, time to, and like you said, scrumptious does not describe it well enough. But what I
Yeah.
found was I pulled a cherry out and took a bite of the cherry. Two things take place. First, you get the rush of the alcohol, but then second, you get the disappointment of the cherry's lost all its flavor, so it becomes
Yep.
bland. It's
Yep.
you're crunching, you're not even crunching, you're just mushing, and there's nothing there.
Yeah.
Then you replace the disappointment with aha, it worked.
Yeah.
It worked.
Yeah.
You've got the greatest community of people out there, I think, in America that they come together.
Yeah. Well, I mean, shit, George, you're the one that knocked the door down and used it to start that path, blaze that trail. This community exists because of you. You started it. You started condensing the information and weeding out all the bullshit that, my grandpappy said this and that, and the other, and you don't need this and that and the other. And you helped to get rid of all that. I
Man, you
like to
give me a
tell
lot of
people
credit.
that,
I as much as I appreciate it, I would just say that I maybe started something, but there are a lot of YouTubers out there that have taken up the mantle.
oh yeah,
You and Jesse come to mind right off the bat. I mean, you two guys have been wonderful in doing the same thing and sharing information. Because I told you the story about how I actually got started with it. I was running a beer store because that's what I wanted to do after retirement from the military. I just,
yeah,
and I grew up with my father and my grandfather that, they were distilling, they were moonshiners.
hmm
Everybody in the neighborhood. I mean, we lived in the backwoods of Virginia. I mean, what else did
yeah,
you do except go to the sawmill?
right,
And then so I said, I could do this too. And so I started searching for information.
yeah,
And I mean, what I found was, oh yeah, you get a bag of this, and you pour this in here, and you stir it a little bit, you harken spit to the east,
yeah,
and you put a lid on it, you let it sit, and it's done. There you go. That's as easy as that. And I was like,
mm,
and that was probably the most accurate that I could get,
yeah,
and that's not accurate at all.
yeah. The
And I thought,
information was scattered and wrong.
yeah,
And you really had to, in the early days, I mean, I started looking into it in 2015. HomeDistiller.org was already really well established, so they had a lot of really good information on there, but it
yeah,
took me a while to get to them. Like
right.
it wasn't the first thing that popped up online. And so
I
now,
agree.
almost 10 years later, 8 years later, whatever it is, uh, when I want to look up a topic, there's so much information now. And to me, the only thing that we're missing is legalization because there's still a lot of misinformation, there's a lot of misunderstanding about this hobby. And if we could legalize it, then we take away the stigma and we can validate the correct information and discard all the bad information. But mainly get enough people in the country that understand what it is and how it's done, and that you don't have to think that it's gonna make you go blind. And I have to edit this video.
Yeah.
I have to decide what of this gold I'm going to cut and what I'm going to keep and squish into my cherry bounce video, and then the rest of it, I'm going to post all the rest of it on Patreon so the guys can listen in on our conversation.
Yeah, we can close it up, man.
Okay.
I think we kind of covered enough to bore people.
All right. Well, thank you very much, George. I am very excited to see what you got coming up from your channel, and
Yep.
I know that the entire community is ready to welcome you back as well.
Bearded, it has been an honor. It's been my pleasure to have a chance to talk to you again. It's kind of hard to explain, man.
Yeah,
Good friends are hard to come by.
and they're hard to find in the first place.
All right, so head over to George's channel. I'm going to put a link down in the video description for you, just in case you need it. George says he's going to have some new content coming out very soon. So welcome back, George, and we can't wait to see what you do. All right, thanks for watching. Talk at you later.